When a broken German shepherd hears a familiar voice at the shelter, he starts shaking uncontrollably. What unfolds next will melt your heart as a man, a dog, and a forgotten boy find healing, family, and hope in the most unexpected way. Don't miss this powerful journey. The old shelter stood forgotten at the edge of town, battered by time and weather. Its faded walls held 1,000 stories of broken hearts, some healed, many not. Inside, cages lined narrow corridors where hopeful eyes waited day after day for someone to notice them. Max was different. He didn't wait, he hid. A German shepherd with a scar cutting across one ear and fur dulled by neglect, Max huddled in the far corner of his kennel, trembling whenever footsteps approached. No barking, no wagging, only silence, heavy and brittle. The other dogs yapped and whined, their voices blending into a desperate chorus. But Max stayed quiet, as if he had long ago given up on being heard. Then, one afternoon, a new sound drifted through the shelter. A voice, not loud, not demanding, but warm and steady. "Hey, buddy," the voice said. Max lifted his head, just barely. His ears twitched. His whole body tensed, as if caught between hope and fear. Daniel Hayes stood outside Max's kennel. His jeans were dusty, his jacket patched, but his eyes were kind. He crouched slowly, extending a hand palm up, staying a respectful distance. "You're safe," Daniel murmured. Max whimpered softly, curling tighter into himself. Karen, the shelter manager, approached quietly. "He's been here 6 months, she said. "Picked up wandering after a bad storm. No microchip, no history. No one's ever even gotten this close." Daniel didn't answer right away. He just watched Max with a quiet patience most people didn't have. "He looks like he's been through hell," Daniel finally said. Karen nodded. "We don't know what happened, but it left scars." Max sniffed the air cautiously. Daniel smelled different, like earth, wood smoke, something grounded and real. Carefully, Max inched forward, his nails clicking softly on the concrete floor. Daniel didn't move, didn't push, just whispered again, "It's okay." A moment later, Max's nose brushed Daniel's fingertips, a touch so light it might have been imagined. Karen's breath caught. Daniel smiled, small and sad. "I want to adopt him," he said. Karen hesitated. "It won't be easy. He's broken." Daniel's gaze didn't waver. "So am I." Paperwork came next. Pages and pages of promises Daniel intended to keep. Max trembled as Karen slipped a leash over his neck, but didn't resist. His eyes stayed locked on Daniel, desperate and unsure. Outside, sunlight poured over them, harsh and brilliant. Max squinted, overwhelmed. Daniel knelt beside him, shielding Max from the worst of it with his body. "I've got you," he whispered. The drive home was silent, except for the occasional whine from Max, curled tightly in the passenger seat. Daniel kept talking. Low, steady words about nothing and everything, just to fill the space, just to remind Max he wasn't alone. Home was a small farmhouse at the edge of a sprawling field, far from the noise of town. When Daniel opened the truck door, Max hesitated, nose twitching. "You're okay," Daniel said, patient as ever. It took long minutes, but eventually Max leapt down, landing stiffly. He followed Daniel up the steps, tail tucked tight. Inside, the house smelled of wood, old books, and something warm. Safety. Daniel had set up a bed beside the fireplace, soft and inviting. He left a bowl of water nearby and scattered a few toys, though he didn't expect Max to touch them yet. Max circled the room, stiff-legged, nose working overtime. Every creak made him flinch. Daniel sat on the couch, pretending not to watch. He let Max have the space. the silence. That night, Daniel fell asleep on the couch. When he woke hours later, he found Max curled up at the foot of the stairs, halfway between running and staying. Progress. The days that followed were slow, stitched together with fragile victories. The first time Max ate from his bowl while Daniel was in the room. The first time Max didn't flinch when Daniel coughed. The first time Max let out a sigh, not fear, but the beginning of trust, as he lay down near Daniel's feet. Daniel never pushed, never rushed. He understood that healing wasn't a straight road. It twisted and doubled back, especially for souls as battered as Max's. Some days were harder. Thunderstorms sent Max into trembling fits. Loud trucks made him cower. The sight of a man in a baseball cap once sent him scrambling under the porch for hours. But Daniel stayed. Always. He read aloud in the evenings, his voice a steady current. He sang tunelessly while fixing the fence. He sat quietly, offering his presence without expectation. And little by little, Max came closer. One morning, Daniel woke to find Max's head resting lightly against his outstretched hand, both of them bathed in the pale light of dawn. Daniel didn't move. He barely breathed. Tears burned his eyes, unbidden and fierce. "Good boy," he whispered hoarsely. Max's tail gave the tiniest thump against the floor. It wasn't a full wag. It wasn't trust, not completely. But it was a start. And sometimes, a start is everything. Days turned into weeks, and Max slowly began stitching himself into the fabric of Daniel's life. It was never dramatic. There were no sudden leaps into Daniel's arms, no joyful barking at the door. Instead, there were glimmers, small and fragile, as Max dared to believe the world might not always hurt him. Each morning, Daniel filled 2 mugs with coffee, placing one on the low table near the couch where Max liked to linger. He never expected Max to drink it, of course. It was a gesture, a reminder that Max was part of the ritual, not apart from it. Some mornings, Max would inch closer, sniffing the air, ears pricked in curiosity. Other mornings, he stayed curled in his safe corner, observing through wary eyes. Daniel never commented, never forced. He simply shared his days with Max, fixing broken fence posts, tending the tiny vegetable patch, hammering away at stubborn bits of an old barn he hoped to rebuild someday. And Max, in his own silent way, began to follow. A few paces behind at first, always careful to keep an escape route clear. But still, he followed. One afternoon, while Daniel sanded a battered doorframe, Max did something he hadn't dared before. He lay down, not far away, not pressed against the wall, not hidden behind a piece of furniture. Just there, exposed, vulnerable, trusting. Daniel didn't acknowledge it, though his chest ached with the weight of it. Instead, he kept sanding, kept humming under his breath. He let Max's courage be its own reward. Later that evening, as a storm brewed on the horizon, Max grew restless. He paced from window to door, whining low in his throat. His body trembled with the memory of storms past, of thunderous nights filled with fear. Daniel lit a fire in the hearth, its crackling warmth filling the house. He settled on the couch, leaving enough space beside him, and waited. Minutes dragged by. Then, slowly, Max crept toward him, step by uncertain step, until his head bumped awkwardly against Daniel's leg. Daniel said nothing. He simply opened his hand and let it rest palm up on the cushion. An invitation. Max hesitated, then rested his muzzle against it, shivering. Daniel's fingers brushed gently along Max's scarred ear, feather-light. No grabbing, no trapping, just presence. "You're okay," Daniel whispered into the stormy silence. And for the first time, Max believed him. From that night on, things changed. Max began sleeping at the foot of Daniel's bed instead of by the stairs. He trotted after Daniel into the fields, nose lifted to catch the scents on the wind. Sometimes he even chased after the fluttering leaves, startled by his own playfulness. Joy, fragile and tentative, had found a foothold. One bright morning, as Daniel repaired the front gate, a battered truck pulled into the long gravel driveway. Max froze, every muscle tense. The driver, a man in a worn jacket and heavy boots, stepped out, waving. "Neighbor," he called out cheerfully. "Name's Tom. Heard you moved in a few months back." Daniel set down his hammer, giving a cautious smile. "Daniel. Good to meet you." Tom's gaze shifted to Max, who stood rigid beside Daniel, tail low. "Fine-looking shepherd," Tom said. "Friendly?" Before Daniel could answer, Tom extended a hand toward Max. It was too fast. Too much. Max's ears pinned back. He took a shaky step backward, a low growl rumbling from deep in his chest. Tom snatched his hand back, frowning. "Whoa there, boy. Ain't gonna hurt you?" Daniel stepped between them, voice calm but firm. "He's been through a lot. Give him space." Tom shrugged. "Suit yourself." As the neighbor drove off, dust trailing behind his truck, Daniel knelt beside Max. "You're okay," he said again. Max leaned into him, body vibrating with tension. Daniel stayed like that until the trembling eased. It was a reminder. Healing wasn't a straight line. Fear could flare up without warning, old ghosts clawing their way back to the surface. But Daniel was ready to fight them alongside Max. Later that week, Daniel decided to take Max for his first real outing beyond the farm. It was a gamble, he knew. The town was small, but busy enough. Voices, traffic, strangers. He fitted Max with a sturdy harness and leash, speaking soft encouragements as they drove the few miles into town. At first, Max clung close to Daniel's side, every sound making him flinch. But Daniel kept his pace slow, his hand steady on the leash. They visited the hardware store, where Mr. Jenkins handed out dog treats with a gentle smile. Max wouldn't take one, but he sniffed cautiously at Jenkins's outstretched palm. They walked past the bakery, where sweet scents filled the air. Max's nose twitched, his body easing a fraction. They even sat for a moment at the small town square, Daniel on a bench, Max lying beneath it, his eyes wide but curious. It wasn't perfect. At one point, a car backfired down the street, and Max tried to bolt. Daniel dropped to a knee instantly, whispering soothing words, anchoring Max back to safety. But it was a start, and starts were precious. By the time they returned home, Max was exhausted, but he lifted his head when Daniel ruffled his fur. "Proud of you, buddy," Daniel murmured. Max's tail thumped weakly. Weeks passed, each one weaving a stronger bond between man and dog. Max learned to trust the rhythms of the house. The morning coffee, the evening fire, the quiet talks on the porch under the stars. And Daniel learned to trust Max's silences, reading the subtle shifts in his body language, understanding when to give space and when to draw close. They were two wounded souls, stitching each other back together one fragile thread at a time. But the world wasn't done testing them yet. One chilly autumn morning, while Daniel stacked firewood out back, Max froze at the edge of the porch, his body taut with alarm. A figure stood by the gate. A woman, her coat flapping in the breeze, her hair tucked beneath a knitted cap. She called out something Daniel couldn't quite hear. Max's hackles rose. His bark, sharp, panicked, split the air. He dropped the wood, wiping his hands as he jogged towards the gate. The woman smiled tightly. "Hi. Sorry to bother you. I'm looking for a German shepherd. Lost him months ago. His name's Ranger." Daniel's heart dropped into his boots. He looked back at Max, who whimpered low in his throat, body trembling. "Ranger?" Daniel echoed numbly. Woman nodded eagerly. "Big boy. Scar on one ear. I've been searching everywhere." Behind him, Max took a step backward, eyes wide, pleading. Everything inside Daniel screamed. The past Max had fled from, the life he had barely survived, might have come to claim him again. And Daniel didn't know if he could protect him. Not this time. Daniel stood frozen at the gate, the woman's hopeful face blurred against the swirling storm inside him. Behind him, Max, Ranger, shivered like a leaf caught in an unseen wind, his wide eyes locked onto Daniel's, pleading. He's terrified, Daniel realized. Not confused, not excited to see a familiar face. Terrified. "I'm sorry," Daniel said slowly, carefully. "Are you sure it's him?" The woman laughed lightly, a high, brittle sound. "Of course, I know my boy. Scar on the ear, right? Brown patch on his side." Daniel glanced back. The scar, yes. The brown patch, faint beneath the thick fur. Yes. But scars didn't tell the full story. "Where did you last see him?" Daniel asked, buying time, feeling Max's panic pressing against his skin like a second heartbeat. The woman's smile faltered. She shoved her hands deep into her coat pockets. "It's complicated. We moved a lot. He slipped out one night. Been looking ever since." Daniel studied her closely. There was something off, something in the tension of her stance, the way her eyes darted around the property. Max hadn't moved, hadn't wagged, hadn't barked in greeting. He was locked in place by pure, bone-deep fear. "Can you prove he's yours?" Daniel asked, keeping his voice even. The woman bristled. "I don't have papers on me, but trust me, I know my dog." Daniel's hands curled into fists at his sides. Trust wasn't a currency he was willing to trade. "I'm sorry," he said again, "but I need more than just your word." The woman's expression twisted into a sneer. "Figures. Some loser finds a beautiful dog and thinks he's entitled to him." Max whined, a low, keening sound, and took another trembling step backward. Daniel felt something deep inside him snap. "Leave," he said, voice low and cold. "Now." The woman hesitated, then spat on the ground near the gate. "You'll be sorry," she hissed before storming back to her car. Daniel stood rooted to the spot until the dust from her tires had long since settled. Only then did he turn back to Max. The dog was crumpled on the porch, chest heaving, eyes squeezed shut as if trying to vanish into nothingness. Daniel approached slowly, kneeling beside him. "Hey, buddy," he whispered. "You're safe. She's gone. I'm not letting anyone take you." Max cracked one eye open, his body shuddering. Daniel stayed with him for hours, speaking soft nonsense words into the cool autumn air, anchoring Max to the present with the steady rhythm of his voice. By nightfall, Max managed to crawl into Daniel's lap, an awkward, sprawling heap of trust and desperation. Daniel held him tightly, promising silently that no matter what came next, they would face it together. The next morning, Daniel called the local animal shelter. He explained everything. The woman's sudden appearance, Max's terrified reaction, the way she couldn't provide any proof. The shelter director, a kind woman named Maria, listened carefully. "I remember when Max came in," she said. "He was a wreck. We couldn't trace his past. No chip, no tags." Daniel's heart sank. No legal proof of ownership, no paper trail tying Max to him. If the woman pressed charges or made a claim, it could turn ugly fast. "Can I register him now?" Daniel asked. "Of course," Maria said warmly. "Bring him in. We'll get everything official." That afternoon, Daniel and Max drove into town. Max trembled the whole ride but kept glancing at Daniel, drawing strength from his presence. At the shelter, Maria knelt down at Max's level, moving slowly, respectfully. "You've come so far, haven't you, handsome boy?" she murmured. Max sniffed her hand cautiously before resting his head lightly against it. Maria smiled. "He's choosing you?" Daniel's throat tightened. They completed the paperwork, and Maria slipped a brand-new collar around Max's neck, a deep forest green that set off his rich coat. On the tag, freshly engraved, Max. If found, call Daniel. It was official. No one could take him now. Driving home, Daniel glanced over at Max, who sat up a little straighter in the passenger seat, ears perked forward. "You're mine," Daniel said aloud, voice thick. "And I'm yours." Max thumped his tail once against the seat. At home, they celebrated with a feast, a thick steak for Max, a cold beer for Daniel. Max ate slowly at first, glancing up between bites as if to make sure it wasn't some cruel trick. When he finished, he padded over and rested his head against Daniel's knee with a deep, contented sigh. It felt like the final stitch pulling tight. That night, Daniel dreamed of running through golden fields with Max at his side, the sky wide and blue above them. But the peace didn't last. A few days later, while Daniel repaired the back fence, he noticed tire tracks carving deep ruts into the soft earth near the woods. Too close to the property line, too fresh. Max noticed too. He stood at the edge of the yard, nose lifted, body rigid. Daniel's stomach twisted. Someone had been watching. He double-checked the locks on the gates, installed a security camera above the porch, and kept Max close at all times. But the feeling of being hunted never quite left. Late one night, a knock shattered the silence. 3 sharp raps against the door. Max bolted upright, teeth bared in a silent snarl. Daniel's heart thundered in his ears. He grabbed the old shotgun from the closet, not loaded but a deterrent, and cracked the door open a sliver. The porch light illuminated a different figure than he expected. A young boy, no more than 12, stood shivering in the cold, a bruised backpack slung over one shoulder. Behind him, half hidden by the darkness, loomed another shape, a dog, a tiny mutt, ribs showing, eyes wide with terror. The boy's lip trembled. "Please," he whispered, "can you help us?" Max stood stiff beside Daniel, but something in his body language changed. Not fear, recognition, pain, hope. Daniel opened the door wider. "Come in," he said. The boy stumbled into the house, the skinny dog pressed against his leg like a shadow. Max hovered nearby, tense but curious, his ears flicking forward. Daniel shut the door firmly behind them and crouched down. "You're safe here," he said softly. The boy flinched at the words, as if safety was a language he barely understood. Daniel took a breath. "I'm Daniel. What's your name?" The boy hesitated, fingers tightening around the frayed strap of his backpack. "Tyler," he whispered. Daniel nodded toward the trembling dog at Tyler's side. "And your friend?" Tyler looked down, his expression fierce with protectiveness. "His name's Toby." Toby licked Tyler's hand, his body trembling with exhaustion. Daniel's heart twisted. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Tyler's eyes widened at the offer, suspicion battling raw desperation. "Yeah," he said finally, voice cracking. Daniel led them into the kitchen. He poured a mountain of kibble into a bowl for Toby, who ate like he hadn't seen food in days. Then he warmed up leftover stew for Tyler, sliding the bowl across the table. Tyler stared at it like it might vanish if he blinked. "Take your time," Daniel said gently. Max sat nearby, watching everything unfold, his tail thumping once in cautious approval. As Tyler ate, Daniel knelt beside Toby, speaking in low, soothing tones. Toby shrank back at first, but eventually allowed Daniel to scratch gently behind one ear. His fur was patchy, his ribs too visible. He's been through hell, Daniel thought grimly. Tyler finished eating and wiped his mouth with his sleeve. "You can stay here tonight," Daniel said. "Both of you." Tyler's shoulders sagged with relief, but a flicker of fear still haunted his eyes. "Won't they come looking?" Tyler whispered. Daniel frowned. "Who?" Tyler hesitated, then blurted it all out in a rush. "My mom's boyfriend. He hurts dogs, hurts people too. We had to get away." Daniel clenched his jaw. Pieces clicked into place. The woman at the gate, the tire tracks, the constant feeling of being watched. They weren't just after Max. They were after Tyler, too. "You're safe here," Daniel said again, meaning it with every fiber of his being. That night, Daniel set up a mattress in the living room. Tyler curled up with Toby beside him, their breathing sinking into a fragile rhythm of trust. Max settled at the foot of the makeshift bed, his presence a silent vow of protection. For the first time in days, Daniel slept deeply. Morning brought cold, crisp air and a heavy decision. Daniel called Maria at the shelter, explaining everything. "We need help," he said simply. Maria didn't hesitate. "I'll be there in an hour." While they waited, Daniel made pancakes, thick, buttery ones, and coaxed smiles from Tyler with every flipped plate. Toby even wagged his tail once, a tiny blur of hope. When Maria arrived, she brought supplies, blankets, food, a leash for Toby, and her calm, steady energy. Tyler clung to Daniel's side as Maria knelt to speak to him. "You're very brave," she said kindly. "We want to help you." Tyler looked up at Daniel for confirmation. Daniel nodded. Maria made a few quiet phone calls, her brow furrowed. Finally, she turned to Daniel. "There's a foster program through the shelter," she said. "Temporary placement for emergencies like this. We can keep them safe while we sort everything out." Daniel's chest tightened. Temporary. The word echoed in his skull like a warning bell. Tyler seemed to sense it, too. He looked up at Daniel, eyes wide and pleading. "Can't we stay here?" Daniel opened his mouth to answer, but Max beat him to it. The big German shepherd rose to his feet and trotted over, nosing Tyler's hand gently, choosing him, claiming him. Daniel swallowed the lump in his throat. "I'll foster them," he said, voice steady. "Both of them." Maria's face softened. "It's a lot of responsibility," she warned gently. Daniel looked at Tyler, at Toby, at Max. "I know," he said. Maria nodded. "We'll get the paperwork started." Over the next few days, life shifted into a new rhythm. Tyler helped Daniel with chores around the property, fixing broken fence posts, clearing brush, stacking firewood. Toby and Max became fast friends, their shared scars forging an unbreakable bond. Slowly, Tyler blossomed under the simple, steady care, laughing more, sleeping deeper, trusting a little easier each day. Daniel learned Tyler loved astronomy. They spent crisp autumn nights lying on the porch, naming constellations. He learned Tyler could whistle beautifully, Toby's favorite lullaby. He learned that despite everything, Tyler still dreamed of becoming a veterinarian someday. "You're going to be amazing," Daniel told him one night. Tyler beamed, but the shadow hadn't disappeared. One evening, as the sun bled crimson across the sky, Max stiffened at the edge of the yard. A black SUV idled at the tree line, engine humming like a wasp. Daniel's blood ran cold. They'd found them. He called Maria immediately. "Stay inside," she ordered. "I'm sending someone now." Daniel locked every door and window, pulled Tyler and Toby close, kept the shotgun within reach. Max stood guard at the window, his hackles raised, a low growl vibrating in his chest. 20 agonizing minutes later, flashing blue lights split the darkness. Deputies swarmed the SUV. After a tense standoff, they pulled 2 figures from the vehicle, the woman from the shelter, and a grim-faced man Daniel had never seen before. Scarred, furious. As they were handcuffed and led away, the man screamed threats into the night. "You can't keep him! He's ours! He's property!" Daniel shielded Tyler's ears. "You're not property," he whispered fiercely. "You're a person. You're free." Tyler clung to him, trembling. Later, after the deputies assured Daniel the pair would be facing multiple charges, Maria arrived to check on them. "You did the right thing," she said quietly. Daniel looked around his home, at Tyler snuggled against Max, at Toby dozing by the fire, and felt a fierce surge of something new. Pride, hope, family. Maybe blood didn't make a family after all. Maybe love did. The house felt warmer that night, even with autumn winds howling against the windows. Tyler curled up between Max and Toby, safe for the first time in what felt like forever. Daniel stood quietly by the doorway, watching the small family they'd become. He remembered the first time he walked into that shelter, broken, angry, alone. And how Max, with nothing but a trembling heart and hopeful eyes, had changed everything. Now Tyler and Toby were here, fitting into the missing spaces he hadn't even known he had. Maria helped them officially file paperwork the next morning. Daniel signed every page with a steady hand, Tyler's trust anchoring him like nothing else ever had. Outside the shelter, Tyler hugged him tight. "You're my real family now," he whispered. Daniel squeezed him back, emotion thick in his throat. "So are you," he said hoarsely. As they drove back home, Max leaned his head into Tyler's lap, sighing contentedly. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. Therapy sessions, court dates, slow healing from deep wounds. But they would walk it together. At the first stoplight, Daniel glanced into the rearview mirror. The reflection showed a boy smiling for the first time in years, a dog resting peacefully, and a man who had finally found his purpose. And for the first time in a long, long while, Daniel realized something powerful. Sometimes saving a life meant saving your own, too. And sometimes, all it took was a voice, a trembling dog, and an open heart. Home wasn't a place. It was the people and the dogs you chose to fight for. Forever.